Morning, Abotai, Chanukah Sameach, Erev Shabbat Shalom. A very fascinating phenomenon happens this coming Shabbat, and there are halachot that are involved. This coming Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Tevet, and Chanukah coincide, and therefore it's one of the three possible times of the year that we take out three Sifrei Torah. Once is on Simchat Torah. Another time is if Shabbat coincides with Rosh Chodesh Tevet, which is on Chanukah, three Sifrei Torah. And the third time is if Shabbat coincides with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is not happening this year, but in any event, it could happen. So this week, this coming Shabbat, we're taking out three Sifrei Torah. In the first Sefer, we read Parashat Miketz, Parashat HaShavua. In the second Sefer, we read the Parashat of Rosh Chodesh, beginning from Uviyom HaShabbat, Uvrashei Chodshechem, in Parashat Pinchas. And in the third Sefer, we read the portion for Chanukah, Bayom HaShishi, Nasi Livnei Gad, which is in Parashat Naso. Now, in general, what's the story with regards to Kaddishim? The way it's supposed to be is as follows. You have to read a minimum of 6 aliyot in the first Sefer from Parashat HaShavua, which means instead of reading the Parashat HaShavua in 7 aliyot, you combine the last one, you make it a longer aliyah in 6. The 7th aliyah is read from the second Sefer, which is Rosh Chodesh, and the maftir is read from the third Sefer, which is Chanukah. Now, in that situation, that is run-of-the-mill default. If that's the case, after the first Sefer Torah, you will not recite a Kaddish. Second Sefer Torah, after you finish the Chovat Hayom, you finished reading 7 aliyot, you will say a Kaddish. Third Sefer Torah, after reading the maftir, you'll say a second Kaddish. That's the halacha, that's the regular halacha. Now again, on Shabbat, you are allowed to add aliyot. So if that's the case, what happens if you read 7 or more aliyot in the first Sefer Torah, which you may. You can finish it in 6, but you may add on to 7 or more. In that case, the halacha is, after the first Sefer Torah, you'll say 1 Kaddish. After the second Sefer Torah, you'll say another Kaddish. And after the third, you'll say a third Kaddish. Now, that is Maran Zichron V'chaim Yabia Omer. The question becomes, what happens in Keilot? This is a question that the Yabia Omer doesn't discuss. It's actually brought in by the Or Letzion and the Yalkut Yosef. What do you do in a tzibur that does not have 3 Sifrei Torah? Sometimes they only have 2. Sometimes they only have 1. If you have 2, it becomes easier. You read Parashat HaShavua, Miketz and Bereshit. Then the second Sefer Torah, you set the Parashat Pinchas, you read Rosh Chodesh, and quickly you roll it back to Naso, quick enough to get there, and you read Shabbat Chanukah. What do you do if you only have Sifrei Torah? What's the deal with the Kaddishim then? Are the Kaddishim on the amounts of aliyot, on the extra aliyot, or the Kaddishim on the Sifrei Torah bedavka? Hagon Chaim Tzion says lo plug. Once the Chachamim said, you say Kaddish, that's at least our minhag, it's brought in from Geonim and Rishonim. Once you make Kaddishim on the aliyot that are read from separate Sifrei Torah, even if you have 2 Sifrei Torah, or even if you have 1 Sefer Torah, you'll still be saying the same amount of Kaddishim, either 2 or 3, depending on how many aliyot you read in Parashat HaShavua, once again, regardless of how many Sifrei Torah the Tzibur actually has. So that's with regards to that. Now, what about Haftarah? Haftarah HaShavua in general, when Shabbat coincides with Rosh Chodesh, we read Ko Amar Hashem HaShamayim Kis'i in Isha'aya. This week that's not the case, because you always have to say the Haftarah Me'in HaMaftir, what you read in the Maftir. What do we say we read as the Maftir? We read Chanukah. So over here, the Haftarah is actually replaced with the Haftarah L'Shabbat Chanukah, Aruni V'Simchi B'Tzion, which is in Sefer Zechariah. However, because Shabbat is Rosh Chodesh, Sunday is Rosh Chodesh, and therefore at the end of Aruni V'Simchi, when you finish the last pasuk, Teshuot Chen Chen La, you say the first and last pasuk of Ko Amar Hashem HaShamayim Kis'i for Shabbat Rosh Chodesh. You say the first and last pasuk of the Machar Chodesh, which is in Shemuel. Vayomer lo Yehonatan Machar Chodesh. So that is, you should take care of that. Also, don't forget, this coming Motzei Shabbat, the order for Havdalah and Adlakat Ner Chanukah in Bet HaKnesset is different than it is at home. In Bet HaKnesset, the halacha is first Nerot Chanukah are lit, and only then Havdalah is made B'tzibur. Once you get home, however, since Shabbat is being mechulal by kindling a flame anyway, so we go back to Tadir. When you go home, you make Havdalah first, and only then do you light Ner Chanukah. Have a wonderful day. Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov and Chanukah Sameach.